The grandfather who chose his new wife over his daughter and grandkids. Your mother died 4 years ago. Your father remarried 8 months later to a woman he was seeing before your mom even passed. You tried to keep things civil for your kids because they'd already lost their grandmother. Then on Christmas morning, you show up to your father's house for the annual holiday brunch. Your 3 young kids are excited to see Grandpa. They run to the door. And your father looks at you with cold eyes and asks, "Why are you even here?" Your 9-year-old daughter hears him. She's standing right there. This is the story of a daughter who lost her mother, then slowly lost her father. A father who remarried before the grief settled, who tried to give away his late wife's belongings to his new stepdaughter, who uninvited his own child and grandchildren to Christmas, then panicked when everyone turned against him for it. Our storyteller, let's call her Sarah, begins 4 years ago when her mother died. Her mother left her specific things, not just random belongings, but meaningful inheritances, her grandmother's ring, a family heirloom, something that connected generations, some savings bonds, financial security her mother wanted Sarah to have, and a dining set, the dining set, the one the family had eaten every holiday meal at growing up. The table where birthdays were celebrated, where Thanksgivings happened, where memories were made. Sarah's mother didn't just leave it to her. She specifically wrote that she wanted Sarah to have it. In her will, in writing, this wasn't casual, this was intentional. These weren't just objects. They were her mother's way of saying, this is your heritage. This is your family. This is what I want you to carry forward. 8 months later, Sarah's father remarried. 8 months, not even a year. Not enough time for the grief to settle. Not enough time for the kids to adjust. Not enough time to properly honor the woman who'd been his wife for decades. And here's the devastating detail. He'd apparently been seeing this woman before Sarah's mom even passed. Sarah found out through her aunt, not from her father, from her aunt, which means her father hid it, knew it would hurt, knew it was wrong, and did it anyway. Sarah says, "I was gutted." Of course she was. Her mother just died. And her father was already replacing her, had possibly been cheating on her while she was dying, but Sarah tried to keep things civil. "For my kids' sake," she says, because they'd already lost their grandmother. They didn't need to lose their grandfather too. So Sarah swallowed her hurt, put on a civil face, tried to maintain the relationship despite the betrayal. Sarah's father's new wife came with 2 adult daughters, 29 and 31 years old, never married, no kids. And from day one, the new wife made it clear she thought Sarah was difficult. Why? Because Sarah wouldn't call her mom, and because Sarah didn't want to do girls' trips with her new stepsisters. Let's pause here because this is absurd. Sarah was 34 years old with 3 kids under 10. Her mother had been dead less than a year, and this woman her father married 8 months after her mother's death, expected Sarah to, one, call her mom, replacing the mother who just died, 2. Bond with her adult daughters who had nothing in common with Sarah, 3. Pretend they were one big happy blended family. Sarah describes these women perfectly. They posted wine memes all day. Sarah was raising 3 young children. She was grieving her mother. She was processing her father's betrayal. She was running on fumes, and these women wanted her to go on girls' trips and play happy family. Sarah wasn't interested, and that made her difficult. Not grieving, not betrayed, not exhausted. Difficult, this is the framework that was established. Sarah's feelings didn't matter. Sarah's grief didn't matter. What mattered was making the new wife comfortable, making the new family work, pretending everything was fine. Last year, 3 years after Sarah's mother died, her father came to her with a request. His wife wanted the dining set, the one Sarah's mother specifically left to Sarah in her will, the one that held every holiday memory from Sarah's childhood. For what? For the younger stepdaughter's new apartment. Not for sentimental reasons, not because it meant something to this woman, for furniture, for an apartment. Sarah said no, obviously. Mom left it to me specifically in her will. This wasn't negotiable, this wasn't something to discuss. Sarah's mother made her wishes clear in writing. The dining set was Sarah's, and Sarah's father got quiet. And then he said something that reveals everything. Your mother's gone. We need to think about our whole family now. Your mother's gone, as if her death erased her wishes, erased her legacy, erased what she wanted for her daughter. We need to think about our whole family now, as if Sarah wasn't family, as if Sarah's mother's wishes didn't matter now that there was a new wife with new daughters who wanted things. Sarah held firm. That set stays with me and my kids, end of discussion. And the new wife, she apparently cried for days about how unwelcoming Sarah was. Unwelcoming, because Sarah wouldn't let her stepdaughter have the furniture Sarah's dead mother left her in her will. The entitlement is staggering. But more importantly, this moment established the battle lines. Sarah's inheritance from her mother became a source of conflict, and instead of defending his late wife's wishes, Sarah's father tried to give away her belongings to make his new wife happy. 2 weeks before Christmas this year, Sarah's father called. He said they'd love to have us for the annual holiday brunch, same as always. Same as always, the familiar tradition, the comfort of routine, the promise that some things stay constant even after devastating loss. Sarah asked if the wife's daughters would be there. Her father said yes, the whole family. Sarah should have known something was off. She says so herself. But her kids were excited to see Grandpa. They'd been looking forward to it. How do you deny your children their grandfather at Christmas? So Sarah went. They showed up right on time. Sarah's 3 kids ran up to the door, excited and happy, probably talking about Grandpa's famous pancakes. Sarah's father opened the door, but he didn't smile. He looked past them at me, and his face just, I don't know, it went cold. Cold, not welcoming, not happy to see his grandchildren, cold. He bent down and hugged the kids, but barely. Like his mind was somewhere else. These are his grandchildren. Kids who lost their grandmother 4 years ago. Kids who were excited to see him, and he couldn't even be present for them because he was too focused on whatever he was about to do to their mother. Then he straightened up and said, "Can I talk to you outside for a second? Not Merry Christmas. Not so glad you're here. Not even basic hospitality. Just, can I talk to you outside?" Sarah followed him onto the porch, and he wouldn't look at her. Sarah's father said, "We were really hoping to keep today peaceful and drama-free." We, not I, we, as in him and his wife, the collective unit that doesn't include Sarah. Sarah asked what he meant, and he explained his wife's daughters were both going through hard times. One just had a bad breakup. They didn't need tension today. His wife's daughters, not Sarah's stepsisters, not family. His wife's daughters, women who are strangers to Sarah, women who wanted Sarah's mother's furniture. These women, who Sarah has no relationship with, no connection to, no obligation toward, needed a peaceful Christmas, and Sarah's presence would create tension. Not Sarah's behavior, not anything Sarah had done, just her presence, her existence, the fact that she was there. Sarah said she wasn't planning on causing tension. She just came for brunch, like he invited her to. And then Sarah's father looked at her and asked the question that would destroy their relationship. "Why are you even here?" Sarah couldn't breathe, because what do you say to that? What do you do when your father, who invited you to Christmas, who asked you to come, who promised annual tradition would continue, looks at you and asks why you showed up? And then Sarah's 9-year-old daughter came to the door. "Mom, are we coming in?" She's 9, standing there with her siblings, excited for pancakes and Grandpa and Christmas. And she heard him. She heard her grandfather ask her mother why she was even there. Sarah looked at her father. He couldn't even hold eye contact, and through the window Sarah could see them. The new wife and her daughters, laughing in the dining room, and the daughter who wanted Sarah's mother's furniture. She was sitting at the head of the table, in Sarah's mother's spot. Sarah said, "No, baby, we're leaving." Sarah's son started crying. He'd been talking about Grandpa's famous pancakes all week. This little boy had been excited, had been looking forward to this, had been counting down, and now they were leaving. And he didn't understand why. Sarah's father said, "Let's not make this a big thing. Let's not make this a big thing." He just asked his daughter why she was even there in front of her children, and he wants her not to make it a big thing. He reached for Sarah's shoulder, and Sarah stepped back. "Don't touch me." She got her kids in the car and left. An hour later, the calls started. Sarah's father, over and over, then texts, "We should talk about this. You're being unreasonable. The kids are missing out because of your attitude." Your attitude, as if Sarah created this situation, as if Sarah asked why her own father was at his house, as if Sarah uninvited herself to Christmas. Then the new wife texted. Sarah was punishing innocent people. Her daughters were devastated that Sarah had ruined Christmas. By leaving when asked why she was even there. By refusing to stay and pretend everything was fine while her father made it clear she wasn't wanted. 2 hours after they left, Sarah's father called from his neighbor's phone. When Sarah answered, he was practically yelling. He said Sarah needed to come back, that he'd made a mistake, that the whole brunch fell apart after they left. And here's what happened. Sarah's aunt, her mother's sister, was there. She heard the whole story from the new wife, who was apparently bragging about how they'd uninvited Sarah to make the day more comfortable. The new wife was bragging about excluding Sarah, about making Sarah unwelcome, about succeeding in getting rid of her. Sarah's aunt lost it, called Sarah's father a disgrace to my mom's memory, and walked out. Then the new wife's daughters started arguing with him about why he was upset. They said Sarah was always causing problems anyway. Always causing problems, by existing, by having inheritance from her dead mother, by not wanting to give away her mother's furniture, by showing up when invited. Sarah's father said, "Please, everyone's mad at me, just come back so we can fix this." Everyone's mad at me, not I'm sorry, not I was wrong, not I hurt you and your children. Just, everyone's mad at me. I need you to come back so I can stop being uncomfortable. He didn't want to fix things with Sarah. He wanted to fix his image. He wanted to make the discomfort stop. He wanted his daughter to come back and perform happy family so he wouldn't have to face consequences. Sarah told him the truth. He chose his wife's comfort over his daughter and grandchildren. He made it clear we weren't his family anymore the second he asked why I was even there. Then she hung up. Sarah's brother called, said Sarah should have stayed and worked it out. Worked what out? Her father asked why she was even there, in front of her children, after inviting her. What's to work out? But the brother is worried because now Dad's marriage is rocky and he's sleeping in the guest room. So Sarah needs to fix it. Sarah needs to make it better. Sarah needs to apologize for having feelings about being unwanted at Christmas. Sarah's father has texted every day since, says he wants to make amends. But he still hasn't actually apologized. He keeps saying it was a miscommunication. A miscommunication. Why are you even here? Isn't a miscommunication. It's a statement. It's a question with only one meaning. It's a rejection delivered to your face in front of your children. Sarah's kids keep asking why they can't see Grandpa anymore. They don't understand. They shouldn't have to understand. They're children who lost their grandmother 4 years ago, and now they're losing their grandfather too, not because he died, not because he moved away, because he chose his new wife's comfort over them. Sarah says, "I don't know how to explain that he doesn't actually want us there." How do you tell your children that? How do you explain to a 9-year-old that Grandpa asked Mommy why she was even there? How do you tell your son that the pancakes he was excited about weren't worth Grandpa's time because his new stepdaughters needed a peaceful morning? You can't. There's no good way to explain that their grandfather prioritized strangers' comfort over their presence. Half of Sarah's family is saying she's being cruel and unforgiving. Cruel. For leaving when told she wasn't wanted. Unforgiving. For not accepting a non-apology after being publicly rejected in front of her children. They want Sarah to go back, to apologize, to fix her father's marriage that's now rocky, to make everyone comfortable again. But nobody's asking, why did Sarah's father uninvite his daughter to Christmas? Nobody's asking, why did the new wife brag about excluding Sarah? Nobody's asking, why is Sarah responsible for fixing what her father broke? The answer is obvious because Sarah has always been expected to absorb it, to be understanding, to be forgiving, to make things work. When her father remarried 8 months after her mother died, absorb it. When he tried to give away her mother's furniture, be understanding. When his new wife called her difficult for not calling her mom, be forgiving. And now, when he asks why she's even at Christmas in front of her children, fix it. Let's be clear about what happened here. Sarah's father invited her to Christmas. Then when she arrived, he uninvited her in front of her children because his new wife's daughters needed a peaceful day without tension. The new wife bragged about it, celebrated it, made it clear this was the plan all along. Sarah's father went along with it, chose his new wife's comfort over his daughter and grandchildren, asked his own child why she was even there. And when it backfired, when Sarah's aunt called him out, when the brunch fell apart, when consequences arrived, he panicked. Not because he realized he was wrong, not because he felt remorse, because everyone was mad at him and he needed Sarah to come back so he could stop being uncomfortable. This isn't about Christmas. This isn't about one bad moment. This is about a pattern that's been building for 4 years, Sarah's father choosing his new wife over his daughter. Sarah's father trying to erase his late wife's legacy. Sarah's father expecting Sarah to absorb every slight, every rejection, every betrayal, and still show up with a smile. Sarah asks, "Was I wrong to just leave like that?" No, absolutely not. Sarah protected her children from further humiliation. She showed them that when someone treats you with disrespect, you don't have to stay. She demonstrated that family doesn't give you permission to be cruel without consequences. Sarah's father wants her to come back, but he won't apologize, won't acknowledge what he did, won't take responsibility. He just wants the discomfort to stop, wants things to go back to how they were, where Sarah absorbed everything and stayed quiet and made everyone else comfortable. But Sarah can't do that anymore, and she shouldn't. Sarah's mother left her a dining set, a place where family gathered, where memories were made, where love was shared. Sarah's father is trying to give that away, to replace it, to erase it. But Sarah is holding on to it for her kids, for her mother's memory, for the family her mother wanted to preserve. Sarah's father asked, "Why are you even here?" And Sarah answered by leaving, by showing her children that they don't have to beg for space at a table where they're not wanted. Maybe one day Sarah's father will understand what he's lost. Maybe he'll genuinely apologize. Maybe he'll choose his daughter and grandchildren over his new wife's comfort. But until then, Sarah is doing exactly what her mother would want, protecting her children, honoring her legacy, and refusing to disappear to make someone else comfortable. So I want to ask you, if someone invited you to Christmas, then asked why you were even there in front of your kids, would you stay? Would you work it out for the sake of keeping the peace? Would you accept a non-apology that calls it a miscommunication? Or would you do what Sarah did, gather your children and leave with whatever dignity you have left? Let me know in the comments. And if you've ever been made to feel unwelcome at your own family gathering, share your story. Because you're not required to smile through your own rejection. You're not obligated to fix what other people broke. And you're not cruel for protecting yourself and your children from people who have made it clear you're not wanted. Sarah's mother left her more than a dining set. She left her the strength to know her worth, and the courage to walk away when that worth isn't recognized. Story 2, the son who moved out. When your dad chooses his toxic ex over you again, you're 6 years old when your dad starts dating Claire. Your parents just separated. You're trying to understand what's happening. Then your parents get back together. Claire disappears. Life goes back to normal. Your mom dies when you're 12, and Claire comes back like she was waiting. For 2 years, you watch her call your dead mother a whore. Watch her try to make you babysit her kids. Watch her try to parent you when she barely knows you. Finally, she and your dad break up. You get your life back. Now you're 19. And you overhear a phone call. Your dad is moving Claire back in. Again, for the 3rd time, without telling you, without asking you, without considering that you might have an opinion about living with the woman who disrespected your dead mother. So you pack your bags, and your dad can't understand why you won't work on being a family with her. This is the story of a son who loved his father enough to leave. Because sometimes protecting yourself means walking away from people who keep choosing someone who hurts you. Our storyteller, let's call him Jake, is 19 years old. But this story started when he was 6 or 7. Jake's parents separated, and his dad started dating Claire. Both of them are in their 40s now, which means Claire has been orbiting Jake's family for over a decade. Like a comet that keeps coming back, causing damage each time. Jake was 6 or 7, old enough to remember, old enough to form impressions, old enough to know that this woman wasn't his mom and his mom was still alive somewhere. Then Jake's parents got back together, and Claire was gone. Jake doesn't say how long his parents were back together, but it was long enough that life stabilized, long enough that Claire became a memory, someone who used to be around, someone who left. Then Jake's mother died. Jake was 12 years old when he lost his mother, and Claire came back, not immediately. Jake doesn't give us the exact timeline, but it happened. While Jake was grieving his mother, while his father was grieving his wife, Claire reappeared. She and Jake's dad got back together. They dated for 2 years, and during those 2 years, Jake says, "She and I had our issues." That's an understatement, because what Jake describes next isn't just issues. It's systematic disrespect, boundary violations, and cruelty directed at a grieving child. Claire had children from a previous relationship. We don't know how many, we don't know their ages, but we know Claire had expectations. She expected Jake to be a willing babysitter for her kids because she was dating his dad. Let's pause here. Jake was 12 to 14 years old during this relationship. A child himself, a child who just lost his mother. And Claire expected him to babysit her kids, not occasionally as a favor, as an expectation, an obligation, because she was dating his father. Jake says she expected us to be willing babysitters. Us, meaning Jake and likely other family members. Claire expected the entire family to provide free childcare because she was sleeping with their dad-son brother. Not "would you mind watching them sometimes?" Not "I'd really appreciate the help." Expected. As if it was Jake's responsibility to care for her children because his father chose to date her. This isn't about helping family. Claire wasn't family. Jake makes that very clear. This was about Claire treating Jake like staff, like a resource to be used, like his time and energy belonged to her because she had access to his father. But the babysitting expectation wasn't the worst of it. Claire called Jake's mother a whore, his dead mother. The woman who couldn't defend herself. The woman Jake was still grieving. Why? Because Jake's mother was dating someone else when Jake's dad and Claire were together the first time, and then Jake's mom got back with Jake's dad. So Claire decided Jake's mother was a whore, for dating during a separation and then reconciling with her husband. But Jake's dad did the exact same thing. He dated Claire during the separation, then got back with Jake's mom. Jake says, why that only made mom a WH Ray and not dad is something she never answered. Of course she didn't answer, because there's no answer, except the obvious one, misogyny. The classic double standard where women who date are sluts and men who date are just dating. But this wasn't just abstract misogyny. This was Claire calling Jake's dead mother, a woman who couldn't defend herself, a woman Jake loved and lost, a whore, to Jake's face, while expecting him to babysit her kids. Cruelty is staggering, and it wasn't isolated. Jake says this was an issue we had with each other, meaning it came up multiple times, meaning Claire said this more than once, meaning she wouldn't let it go. Eventually, things came to a head. Jake and Claire argued, and Jake told her the truth. She would never be my mother, and I would never treat her or her children as my family, so she needed to get the fuck out of my business. Jake was probably 13 or 14 when this happened. A teenager. A kid. And he had to tell an adult woman to get out of his business because she kept trying to parent him while simultaneously disrespecting his dead mother. And here's what's remarkable. Jake's dad backed him up. Jake's dad told Claire she couldn't try to parent me because I was right. She wasn't my mother and we didn't even know each other that well. Read that again. Jake's own father admitted Claire and Jake didn't even know each other that well. They didn't have a relationship. They didn't have history beyond conflict. Claire was his dad's girlfriend, nothing more, nothing less. And yet Claire expected to parent Jake, expected him to babysit, expected him to accept her authority, expected him to treat her children as family. Based on what? Based on sleeping with his father. After Jake's confrontation with Claire, she and Jake's dad broke up. Finally, Claire was gone. Jake could breathe, could grieve his mother without someone calling her a whore. Could live in his own house without babysitting obligations. Could be a kid again. That was 5 years ago. Jake was 14. He probably thought, finally, she's gone for good. 11 weeks ago, Jake found out his dad and Claire were back together. Not because his dad told him, not because his dad sat him down for a conversation, not because his dad respected him enough to communicate. Jake found out by accident. He overheard his dad on the phone with Claire. And it wasn't just that they were dating again. His dad was planning to move Claire in with them, into Jake's home. Claire was trying to wrap up her job and figure stuff out with her kids' school before moving in. This wasn't hypothetical. This wasn't early stages. This was happening. Plans were made. Logistics were being handled. Claire's kids were changing schools, and Jake's dad hadn't said a word to him. Jake and his dad argued, because of course they did. Because Jake had to find out by accident that the woman who called his dead mother a whore was moving into his house. And Jake's dad's response, I didn't need to look so disgusted at the thought. Didn't need to look disgusted, as if Jake's feelings were just about his facial expression, as if the problem was Jake's reaction, not his dad's decision. Jake says, because I know I looked disgusted at the thought of living with her. Of course he looked disgusted. He was disgusted. At the thought of living with a woman who called his dead mother a whore, tried to make him babysit her kids as a teenager tried to parent him when she barely knew him, caused enough conflict that even his extended family, grandparents, aunt, uncle, had issues with her, but Jake's dad was more concerned about Jake's facial expression than about the fact that he was forcing this woman back into Jake's life without warning. Jake didn't waste time. He spoke to both sets of grandparents. His maternal grandparents, his dead mother's parents, said he could move in with them. The people who loved Jake's mother, who probably knew exactly what it meant that Claire was moving in, who understood what Jake was facing, they opened their home, gave Jake an escape route, gave him permission to protect himself. Jake started packing, and his dad found out, not because Jake told him, because he saw Jake packing. Jake's dad asked him not to leave. Told him we could find a way to make all of us work as a family. All of us. Jake, his dad, Claire, and Claire's kids. That's the family Jake's dad was envisioning. The blended family where Jake would just get over it, get over the disrespect, get over the dead mother comments, get over the babysitting demands, get over everything, just work on it, just be a family. But Jake was clear. I wasn't willing to work on that, and I refused to be Claire's family, and I refused to be her kid's babysitter. Jake wasn't being stubborn. He was setting boundaries. Boundaries that should have been obvious. I won't be family with someone who disrespected my dead mother. I won't babysit children who aren't my responsibility. I won't pretend this is okay when it's not. And then Jake said something that shows incredible maturity for a 19-year-old. He wants to be with her, and that is a decision he's allowed to make. But I would not pay toward a household where she lives, so I'm moving somewhere else. Jake acknowledged his dad's autonomy. His dad is an adult. He can date whoever he wants. But Jake also claimed his own autonomy. He's an adult too. And he won't pay bills in a house where Claire lives. Because yes, Jake was paying bills. A couple of bills plus money for groceries every week. Jake was contributing financially to the household at 19 years old, and his dad expected him to keep doing that while living with Claire, expected Jake to fund the household that included the woman who called his mother a whore. Jake moved out. Claire and her kids moved in last week. Jake's dad hoped I would come around. Hoped, as if Jake's boundaries were just a phase, a tantrum. Something he'd get over once Claire actually moved in and everyone saw how great it was. But Jake didn't come around. They spent Thanksgiving apart for the first time ever. Let that sink in. Jake is 19 years old. He spent 19 Thanksgivings with his father, every single one, even after his mother died, even during the difficult years. This is the first Thanksgiving they've ever spent apart, and it's not just Jake. Jake's paternal grandparents, his dad's own parents, refused to spend Thanksgiving with Claire too. His dad's family doesn't like Claire, they never have. Jake mentioned earlier that Claire had issues with his grandparents, his aunt, and his uncle, all paternal relatives, his dad's side of the family. So this Thanksgiving, Jake's dad spent the holiday with Claire and her kids, while his own son and his own parents celebrated separately. His dad was upset. Told Jake, "Your room is still waiting for me and to please come home because he misses me." Your room is still waiting. As if the room is what matters, as if Jake left because he needed different furniture or a different space. Jake didn't leave because of the room, he left because of Claire, and Claire is living there now. So the room isn't really waiting for Jake. It's waiting for a version of Jake who's willing to pretend Claire is acceptable. A version that doesn't exist. Jake told his dad, "I loved him, but I couldn't be around Claire." Simple, clear, not ambiguous, and Jake's dad said, "It felt like I moved out to punish him for trying again with Claire and there was never any rush for me to move out." There it is, the reframe, the victim reversal. Jake moved out to punish him, not to protect himself, not to avoid living with someone who disrespected his dead mother, to punish dad, and there was never any rush to move out. As if Jake made an impulsive decision. As if this wasn't the culmination of years of conflict, disrespect, and now, the final straw, his dad planning to move Claire in without even telling him. Jake's dad is reframing Jake's boundary as punishment, Jake's self-protection as an attack, Jake's refusal to fund a household with Claire as vindictive rather than reasonable. This is classic manipulation, making the person who sets a boundary into the bad guy. Making the person who leaves an abusive situation into the aggressor. Let's count how many times Jake's dad has chosen Claire. First time, when Jake was 6-7 after his parents separated, dad chose to date Claire, then reconciled with Jake's mom and Claire left. Second time, when Jake was 12 after his mom died, dad chose to date Claire again, despite the conflict with Jake, despite the babysitting demands. Despite Claire calling Jake's dead mother a whore. Dad stayed with her for 2 years until the relationship ended after Jake's confrontation. Third time, now, when Jake is 19. Dad chose to get back with Claire, planned to move her in without telling Jake. And when Jake set a boundary by moving out, Dad is trying to guilt him into coming back. 3 times, 3 separate occasions where Jake's dad has chosen Claire over Jake's comfort, Jake's well-being, Jake's boundaries. And every time Jake has been expected to adjust, to accept, to work on it. To be the bigger person. At 6-7, he was too young to object. At 12-14, he was grieving his mother and had to tolerate Claire calling her a whore. At 19, he finally had the power to leave, and he used it. This isn't just Jake. Let's review who has problems with Claire. Jake for obvious reasons, disrespect of dead mother, babysitting demands, boundary violations. Jake's paternal grandparents, dad's parents, refused to spend Thanksgiving with Claire. Jake's aunt, dad's sister, presumably, had issues with Claire. Jake's uncle, dad's brother, presumably, had issues with Claire. That's Jake's dad's entire immediate family. His parents, his siblings, his son, all of them have had problems with Claire. This isn't about Jake being difficult. This isn't about Jake refusing to give Claire a chance. This is about Claire being someone who creates conflict wherever she goes. And Jake's dad keeps choosing her anyway, over his own family, over his own son, over the people who have been there for him through everything. Why? What does Claire offer that's worth alienating your entire family? Jake doesn't tell us. Maybe his dad is lonely. Maybe he thinks he loves her. Maybe he's comfortable with her despite the chaos she creates. Maybe he sees the conflict as everyone else's problem rather than Claire's pattern. But regardless of why, the fact remains. Jake's dad has chosen Claire 3 separate times, and each time has cost him relationships with his family. Let's talk about something Jake mentioned briefly but is actually significant. Jake was paying bills. At 19 years old, Jake was paying a couple of bills and contributing money for groceries every week. This means Jake wasn't just living at home as a dependent. He was a financial contributor to the household, a paying resident, and his dad expected him to continue paying bills while living with Claire. Expected Jake to fund the household that included the woman who called his dead mother a whore, her children, whom she expected Jake to babysit, a living situation. Jake explicitly said he didn't want Jake's dad wanted Jake's money, but also wanted to dictate who lived in the house Jake was helping to pay for. When Jake said he wouldn't pay toward a household where Claire lives, he wasn't being petty. He was exercising basic financial autonomy. If I'm paying bills, I get a say in who lives here, and I say not Claire. Jake's dad could have said, "You're right, this is your home too, let's talk about this." Instead, he planned to move Claire in without telling Jake and hoped Jake would just accept it and keep paying bills. Jake's maternal grandparents took him in. His dead mother's parents, they've already lost their daughter. And now they're watching their grandson navigate his father's relationship with a woman who disrespected their daughter's memory. They gave Jake a place to go. No questions, no conditions, no, but he's your father or you should try to work it out. Just yes, you can live here, you're safe here, that's what family does, real family, not the forced we could all work as a family that Jake's dad is trying to create with Claire. The people who loved Jake's mother are protecting Jake, giving him space to exist without disrespect, without demands, without being guilt-tripped for having boundaries. Jake is asking if he's the asshole for moving out because his dad got back with Claire and was planning to move her in. Let's be clear. No, absolutely not. Jake is not the asshole for refusing to live with someone who called his dead mother a whore, refusing to babysit children who aren't his responsibility, refusing to fund a household that includes someone. He explicitly said he won't be family with setting a boundary, and following through moving to his grandparents' house, instead of staying in a situation that would hurt him. Jake's dad is an adult who can date whoever he wants. But Jake is also an adult who can live wherever he wants. And he chose to live somewhere that doesn't include Claire. That's not punishment, that's self-preservation. Here's what Jake's dad wants. He wants Jake and Claire. He wants his son and his girlfriend. He wants everyone to just get along and be a family. But that's not possible, not with this history, not with Claire's behavior, not with the disrespect and demands and boundary violations. Jake's dad has to choose, and by trying not to choose, he's actually choosing Claire. Because he's the one who moved her in. He's the one who planned it without telling Jake. He's the one who's asking Jake to come back and work on it instead of asking Claire to respect Jake's boundaries. Jake has made his position clear. I love you, but I can't be around Claire. If Jake's dad wants a relationship with his son, he knows what he has to do. Stop dating Claire. Or at least don't move her into the house and expect Jake to live there. But Jake's dad is trying to have both. And in the process, he's losing his son, his parents, and his siblings, because they all refuse to pretend Claire is acceptable. Jake ends his story by noting that his dad thinks he moved out to punish him and that there was never any rush to move out. But there was a rush because Claire was moving in. And Jake had to decide, do I stay and suffer or do I leave and preserve my sanity? Jake chose himself, finally, after years of tolerating Claire. After years of hearing his dead mother disrespected. After years of boundary violations and demands, Jake chose himself. And his dad is upset, not because he misses Jake necessarily, but because Jake's absence is a mirror. It shows Jake's dad what he's chosen and who he's lost in the process. Jake's room is waiting, but Jake isn't coming back, not until Claire is gone, and maybe not even then, because trust, once broken this many times, doesn't easily repair. So I want to ask you, if your parent's partner disrespected your dead parent, would you live with them? If someone tried to make you babysit their kids because they were dating your parent, would you accept that? If your parent moved someone into your home without telling you, would you stay? Or would you do what Jake did, pack your bags, move to people who actually respect you, and let your parent face the consequences of their choices? Let me know in the comments. And if you've ever had to choose between a parent and your own well-being, share your story. Because loving your parent doesn't mean sacrificing yourself for their comfort. And leaving isn't punishment, it's survival. Jake didn't move out to hurt his father. He moved out to protect himself. And that's not just okay, it's necessary. Thanks for watching.